and welcome to our new episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs and Leaders podcast. And I am very excited to welcome today Zoe Bermant. Thank you, Zoe, for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
I am really happy that you are with us. I am going to share a little bit more about what you do, but I think that the timing of what's happening in Israel and all around the world for the Jewish people is so important. And that's also why we have that special Support Israel series in our podcast. And we are interviewing people that have initiatives or that have actions that are helping either Israel or the Jewish people. And you are such a big activist that we're going to talk about what you do. But first, I want to tell more about your company. So Zoe is the owner of Social Media, which is an international team of highly creative, super organized social media experts who live, eat, and breathe data-driven B2B tech social marketing. Zoe is passionate about being recognized as an entrepreneur, not just a mumpreneur, and about startups and technology solutions. That's who you are, and we will share a link of your website so people can check you out. But the reason why it was important for us to have you today was essentially because you have been and you still are, very active on social media since the war broke out on October 7th. Like I said, defending Israel against Hamas. We're going to talk about the difference between supporting Israel and being against Hamas. And also your strong voice, sharing also other people's voice and expanding their voices on social media, which is so important. And I want to start with the first question, which is, you are a social media expert. This is your company. This is what you do for a living. How do you one day say, I'm not going to stay just behind the scene helping my clients be, seen and exposed on social media, but I'm going to actually become this activist? Is there a moment where you decide to do this, or does it happen naturally? Like, how does this happen?
Well, that's actually a really good and very difficult question. I've always said to people to keep their social media brand very professional and not mix politics with their business persona. But that's all very well and good until your life, where your business and your personal, what is happening personally to you, get affected so badly that you have no choice. And if you have a voice and if you have a platform, you have an obligation, if not, it is your right to use your voice for the good. Unfortunately, for the Jewish people right now, there is so much hate and so much bad information online. And we are a very small group of people. We are a very small country. So we need every advocate that we can. And in the beginning, I was just speaking from my own pain. I'm a business manager, a business owner here in Israel. I have a team here in Israel. I have people who have been called up to the army. I have parents who live in Ashkelon, about 20 kilometers from Gaza. I'm not affected. And so I decided to use my voice and my brand to speak about what was going on and to speak about some of the misinformation. About 2 weeks in, I had kind of an epiphany moment, and I realized, hey, this is not my strength. There are a lot of voices out there and they're strong. And my strength is getting those voices heard and seen by other people and the right people, and speaking in the right and most effective and optimized way. So I kind of switched my focus a little bit and thought, how can I educate? How can I recruit? How can I help more of the right people get seen? Because we all, even whether you're a business or not a business, before this or since this has all happened, there is an algorithm on social media that is stopping people being seen. And it's even worse when you've got bots and people reporting you for everything that you say or don't say. And it is a really difficult battle that we have to rise above the noise, to rise above the huge amounts of people that are already out there who have opposing views, who are sharing that misinformation, and to get those voices heard. So that epiphany moment for me was like, how can I use my voice, not just to share my own content, which I have been doing, to create content for other people, to help people understand how to interact in an effective way, and to help those voices rise above the noise.
Right. I think that this is so important. And, this is the podcast for Jewish women entrepreneurs, right? So people who listen to us are people that have businesses. And most people today have to have an identity and a presence on social media. Like very rare entrepreneurs who don't have that. And so that would be my first question, actually, the dilemma that you had as an entrepreneur. Like, what would you say to someone who has a business online? And by the way, we're talking about Jewish women entrepreneurs who are not necessarily based out of Israel or not necessarily only working with Jewish people. They have, clients that are not Jewish, or maybe they don't even know that they are Jewish. Like the clients don't even know that the entrepreneur is Jewish. So what would you, and I'm hearing so many people who want to help, who want to have a voice, who want to do something. But what, as a social media expert, what would you say to those entrepreneurs who at the same time, they're, like you said, they're going through something. They can just make believe that it's not happening to them, and then on the other hand, they also have to protect their business or professional identity. What would you say to them if they have to work with that dilemma?
I think it's an individual decision. You have to make the decision if it's a risk you think you can take, where you speak up or speak out, and that can just be even liking or engaging with content. Today you can like something and all of a sudden you're a this or a that. You know, if you can take that risk, then by all means do it. But if you can't, there are other ways you can support. And this is something that I teach also in business. I teach companies that say to me, well, not everyone wants to be active online. I said, but there are layers of advocacy. Everybody can engage. Everyone can like the CEO's post. Everybody can support other people. You don't have to have your own voice. Not everyone is a thought leader. Not everyone is a subject matter expert, but you can all be active. When I was evaluating for my own company, I was thinking in terms of, do I care if I lose business because I'm actively supporting what I really believe is the right side of history, and I'm very careful. I carefully try not to attack people. I try to share information that is backed up by facts. I even go so far as, if I'm going to share something and I've seen it somewhere else, I'll fact check it myself before I share it, just to be sure that what I'm sharing is the truth and is honest. And to be frank with you, it's actually helped my business. I'm getting positive feedback from the people that it matters. And I have some clients who are not Jewish. I have some clients that I work with where I've said to them, listen, I've chosen this path. Maybe you don't want to be so visible with me. There was a LinkedIn Live I was meant to do with a client a few weeks ago where I pulled out and I said, I'm not sure you want to have me associated with your business right now. But I found them another guest who was happy to run the LinkedIn Live for me. This is a choice, an individual choice I had to make. So I can't tell you what the right or the wrong thing to do is for your business. You have to know and this is with any business, your target audience, who you're working with, whether it's going to affect you or not affect you. And then you make a business decision based on it. All I can say to you is, once you've made that decision, embrace it. Because once you start, you can't go a little bit of the way and then pull back and say, okay, what's online is online. That, what do they say? What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Yes.
It doesn't work like that. What happens
Yes.
on social media stays on social media. And
Right.
careers have been made and broken on posts that have gone out on social media. So if you are going to do it, just be sure that this is something you stand by. I'll tell you, if I've got time, a quick story. I recently got introduced to a company through someone that had worked with us at a different company, and they wanted to work with us. And I said to them, "Are you sure it's not going to be a problem working with this little Israeli, social media agency?" And they said, "No, we don't have a problem with it." But at some point along the way, it got clear to me that there was a problem because the contract was taking a long time to get reviewed and sent back for signature. And maybe it hit someone's desk and they're very anti-Israel, or it could be pro-Palestinian. I don't know why you can't be pro-Palestinian and still see that there are bad things happening over here for the Israelis. But I had to ask myself a tough question: do I care? And at the end of the day, it was like, if they don't want to work with me, that's their loss. If they don't want to work with a team that knows what they're doing and that can stand by what we say and what we do, that's their problem. At the end of the day, the contract got signed. It just took a long time, and everything was fine and great with the world. So I really believe if you embrace who you are as a person to your soul, and you go with strength as an entrepreneur, where you go with that strength to everything that you do as your online and your real persona, it doesn't matter.
I love that. I really do, because there's a mixture of alignment and strategy, right? It is alignment with who you are, and like you said, we can't make believe that we're not, Jewish, or that we're not living in Israel, or that this is not affecting us. There's no way we can. And also, it has to be a strategic decision, like you said. Like every business has to look at their own strategy, their own target market. And I think that this is something that I realized also after COVID, but I think now it's even bigger. And tell me if you agree with me that I think that this war, or this whole, let's say it's a global situation for the Jewish people. It's not only happening geographically in Israel, but the whole anti-Semitism situation that we see around the world is actually pushing entrepreneurs to, like you said, to make a niche decision, like to make a very specific decision, like to really ask themselves, like you said, like, this is one of the questions that we ask ourselves when we go through a niche process is, do I really care if those people don't work with me? Like, is this really, are those the people that I want to work with, or who can I help the most? And I think that even though we're not looking for opportunities, unfortunately, we don't like to call it an opportunity. But do you agree that this might be an opportunity for some entrepreneurs who have been on the fence? Am I working only with Jewish people? Or am I working only with people pro-Israel or anti, whatever, we take it. And now we don't have a choice. We actually have to make a decision. So do you see that around, that people have to make that strategic decision and be more specific about who they're going to help or serve?
Naively, I would love to say it shouldn't make any difference, but
Mhm.
unfortunately, if anything has shown up in the last 8 weeks, is that this is polarizing. People are so strong in their opinion, and it is one of the issues I have with what's going on, because why is it any different to to issues in Syria or Yemen, and this is a point that a lot of activists are making right now. Why is Israel and the situation with the Palestinians still so polarizing, that it comes down to a very deep-seated anti-Semitism? And it took me a while to actually, for that light to switch on, and for me to start saying, yeah, it's anti-Semitism. And, I've got a series of posts that go out now saying, in today's, it's not anti-Semitism, it's anti-Zionism. And there's so many examples of it, like the comment on Pink's photo of her lighting Hanukkah candles, where someone said, that's a bit tone deaf. And she replied, what's tone deaf, me being alive or me being Jewish? So it unfortunately, there is a deep-seated misunderstanding of the situation here in Israel, of how Jews came to need to have a state, and why we live here, right down to why there is security around Gaza, and a fence. There are reasons, and for right or wrong, no matter which side you support, it underneath and underlying there is this deep sense of anti-Semitism, and we have to rise above that. I think we have to face that, and then make our decisions based on our ability to use our voice, to not have it affect our business. And even if it does affect our business a little bit, other opportunities will come along. If there's one thing history has shown about the Jewish people is that we're resilient. We come back, we fight harder. The way we've unified as a country, even, is astounding, really. To go from being on the streets protesting against our government to standing on the streets waving flags as soldiers and their families of fallen soldiers are being taken past, and crying and hugging on the streets. It's something that you can't understand unless you've lived it and you've been here.
Definitely, definitely. Now, I know that you teach that, and that will take more than a podcast episode to get like a quick, training on how to be activist on social media. So I won't ask you to go through the whole training, but you spoke before about layers on how to be like, what are the different layers? How can we support, whether it's a like or it's a post or it's a comment or it's a repost? I know I've heard you speak. I don't know the name of the person who interviewed you, but I was on one of your lives on LinkedIn, and it was really interesting, the small tips that you gave. One of them being that I actually took really seriously, which was, I keep on saying, support Israel, and you mentioned, be more like against Hamas and not support Israel. So there's those things that, as a not, social media expert or professional, we don't really know. So can you just give us some tips on the different layers that entrepreneurs, whether they decide to be, open about it or not, can support, or can, make a difference, or like you said, increase the voice and expand the message?
So I have a few. I'm not going to talk about the layers because I think a lot of my layers advice applies more to LinkedIn, but I am going to talk about a couple of things that I think are very important for any activist, whether you're on the base level, which is just the liking and engaging, or you're sharing your own content, or you're trying to be an influencer. And that is basically this: every like, every comment, every repost or reshare counts towards more visibility. And we're fighting against the algorithm. So we actually need to build, and I don't really love using this word, but an army, in a sense, of activists and people that are supporting the warriors. Out there, there are amazing warriors and voices who are already sharing educational content, who are debunking some of the misinformation online. And just liking and supporting them is already lifting that up and getting that seen by more people. There's always going to be 10%, 20% on this side you will never be able to convince. And 20% on that side, you'll never be able to change how they feel about it. It's the people in the middle who sit and lurk and watch, and who are friends with or have worked with an Israeli company before, and they're not quite sure how they feel. They see tens of thousands of people being killed in Gaza. They think that is tragic, and why is it happening? But they're being fed a lot of different information. But they are the people you can sway an opinion with by elevating the right voices. So my advice to you is, number one, find those voices, and you'll see that in my title down there, I've put at Humanity POV. This is a new grassroots project I'm involved in that is about elevating the creators and the voices on both sides who are sharing the human stories of what is going on and the right educational content. So you can follow Humanity POV. We're going to start elevating some of that content. But find these voices and start engaging with them. Even if all you're doing is resharing some of their content, you're already helping. Recruit people around you and get them active as well. If everybody recruits 5 people, that already gives a huge amplification to what we're doing. And the other thing is, don't go into the dissenters' feeds and start talking. It's so tempting when you see someone post something you don't agree with to go and comment on their posts. But what you're actually doing is empowering them. Because if you think about every comment and every like and every share of your content elevates your content, well, every time you comment on a dissenter's post, you're actually giving them more visibility. Bring them to your post. Get them to come and talk to you. Private message them, or send them a link to your post. Get them talking on your post. Because if we're smart and we get them commenting in our post, first of all, you have the support of the people that already support you to help you deal with the trolls and the misinformation. So you're not the only voice fighting out there. If someone says something you know is factually incorrect, you have all the people who've already engaged with your content or who follow you who can also help support you. But all those comments on your own feed, that's what's elevating your content out to more of the right people. Also, when they're commenting on your content, their friends and their connections see it, and then they come and they start commenting as well. So it might feel like, oh, I'm being trolled and I'm being bombarded and I'm being reported. But if you want to be one of these voices, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to get them into your feed and a good thing to engage with them on your feed. Don't fall into the trap of engaging with bots. Don't fall into the trap of engaging with the wrong voices on the other side, because what you're doing is actually empowering them to be seen by more people.
And I know that I just saw today, I think it was maybe a few days, a post that you listed all the influencers, the names of the people to follow. And I found that, and by the way, you can go on LinkedIn and look for Zoe's profile and see the last post, one of her last posts. And I think that this is a very, very useful, because as you said, we might not all have, the content or the right way to argue or to bring the facts. And by following those people, we're being activists just by giving them more exposure. So I think that's a great advice. I want to talk about, you said something about like being bombarded and being attacked on your post or on your profile. I want to talk about the emotional toll that it has on you and maybe on other people that you're working with, because I mean, you're being activist, you're being out there, you're fighting another kind of war. I mean, you're not on the field, but it is another kind of field. And like you said, once you do it, you have to embrace it. So it's not, you can say, if something happens tomorrow, something big, you can't just say, oh, I'm tired today, I'll look at it tomorrow. You have to be like some kind of, maybe not 24/7, but there is like an ongoing tension of watching what's happening, being able to respond, some kind of responsibility. How do you manage this, and like how is it for you, this whole emotional? It's heavy. I mean, it's not, it must not be easy.
There have been days I've crawled into bed late at night and I'm like, we're all gonna die. But realistically, I know that that's not gonna happen, and
Yes.
I needed to teach myself where to put my energy. It's like a rabbit hole. Once you start, you can get deeper and deeper and deeper into that rabbit hole. And so I had to take myself back a few times and say, that's not healthy for me. I can go down that very deep rabbit hole on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, but it's actually really damaging. So I've put some boundaries in place for myself. One of the things is I make sure that in the last 2 to 3 minutes that I'm online before I stop, I just do something frivolous. I make sure that I'm either going and reading something from someone I know is going to have the view that is going to leave me feeling positive, and I don't dig into the comments because that's where the bad stuff is. Or I'll go and watch some cat videos on TikTok, or I make sure that I walk away from every online session with something that isn't down a rabbit hole. Because what happens is then you just dig further down that rabbit hole, or you go to bed. What was happening in the early days is I would go to bed and within an hour I'd be awake again, panicking that I was missing an opportunity to fight the fight that needed to be fought, and I just wasn't sleeping, and that's not healthy. So I've set boundaries and I've made myself listen to other experts as well. Somebody said something very intelligent to me, which has really stuck with me since the beginning, which is if you're arguing with people online and they're throwing facts at you and you're just throwing facts at them, you're never going to get anywhere. It just becomes this like fact throwing like mission. Ask them questions and get them to a point where they cannot answer the question and they walk away. but you've won that argument in a sense, because you've got them to a point where if they can't validate what they're saying, or they can't find a source for it, or you say to them, you challenge them and say, oh, what UN resolution are you referring to? And they don't know what UN resolution they're referring to. They've just heard it from someone else. They go quiet. And then you don't end up in that cycle of back, forth, back, forth, back, forth, where you're saying, well, UN resolution 424 says blah, 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 blah. And they've like switch off. But then
Right.
they'll throw a different fact at you, and you throw a different fact at them, and they throw a different fact at you. You get them to a point where you ask them a question that they cannot answer, they will walk away. And if you look at some of the trends on social media right now, some of the best content is people like kosher dills taking to the streets, stopping people on the street, Noah Tishby, and asking them a question, and then getting them to a point where they sound like an absolute idiot, and end of argument, end of discussion, and that's powerful. It's really, really powerful. So I have learned had to restrain myself from throwing facts at people, and rather trying to ask them questions and get them to answer my questions.
That is so smart, because you're actually fighting them on their field. Like you're showing that you listened to them, you heard what they said, and you're asking a question about their content, so they can't just throw back something. They have to answer. And like you said, if they don't have the answer, then they're ashamed, and they just back away. That's really smart. But you have to be really calm within yourself to be able to not answer back, or give in to that need of fighting, because I'm sure it is very, very tempting. I'm going to end with one last question, Zoe. Thank you so much. I think this is really, really valuable for everyone who is listening. We're saying there's a saying in Hebrew in Israel. We're saying "B'yachad nenatzech," right? Together we will win. And we're of course talking about the war in Gaza, but also in the north. I mean, we have different fronts. I want to ask you that question. Do you think that the war on social media for the Jewish people, do we have hope for this? Or is it like we're just doing what we can, but we're such a small number of people that doesn't make a difference? That's what I want to ask, because the numbers are so, the difference in numbers, the gaps are so big. So do you believe that the things that we do really, really make a difference, or have we already lost that war on the social media front?
So funny, because I hate the saying "Yachad nenatzech," and I'll tell you why. Because there's no winning in war. There are
Okay.
people dying in Gaza. There are people dying on our side. We've had a really tragic weekend. And I think that this is the difference between, yes, we have a right to exist, but there are human stories here, and human feelings, and human on both sides, and you have to show and acknowledge that humanity. That's number one. Number two, yes, you can move the needle, and yes, you can make a change. And sometimes I see it and it makes me really happy. Like TikTok is so toxic. I hate TikTok, but I do spend a lot of time on TikTok. And some of the best content on LinkedIn is stuff I've shared from TikTok. But that we can talk about that another time. But I sometimes our enemies are their own worst enemies. And I've seen threads where, these riots or these protests, or whatever you want to call them, in Columbia, Ohio, or in Ottawa, or wherever it is, and they take to the streets and it goes violent. And I saw one a week and a half ago where they were chasing this old man down the street in his car, and they were trying to pull him out of the car, and it was violent. And you see the change in the comments, and people start saying, is this what Israel has to put up with? I'm changing sides. I'm no longer supporting the Palestinians. This is crazy. What is going on in this world? This is our country. Why are they behaving like that? So I don't even think we need to work that hard to change and move the needle. They're kind of doing it for themselves by the way they behave. Having said that, our actions do count. Don't attack. Don't be rude. Be humane in what you say and how you talk, because I do feel that makes a difference in how you're perceived. I have this one troll I actually really like him, where we've had really intelligent, smooth conversations where he will comment on every post of mine, but what about all the children and all the people dying in Gaza? And I acknowledge that. I acknowledge it. And then I go and we have these like intelligent conversations in my thread. And it always comes to a place of respect. And if you can do that with someone that is obviously pushing an agenda on your own content, you've won. I don't love the Yachad Nenetzeach, but I do think needles can be moved and opinions can be changed. You have to be strong. You have to speak up. You have to have confidence um, and follow the people that can help you with your thoughts and with your voice, because there are more intelligent people online than me, you know, not even they're online, more knowledgeable. You know, if I want to talk about what's happening at the universities in America, I'm not American. Shai Davidai is my guy, you know. Go to the experts, go to the people who will help support your arguments, share their content, because you can't be an expert in everything.
I love that, because even what you're saying makes so much sense. Even if we are losing the numbers war, because obviously we are, a small number, 14 or 15, millions around the world. But if, like you said, if they themselves are, shooting themselves in the foot, then they're helping us, indirectly and not consciously, obviously. They're helping also the truth. We're not, talking about a cause against another one, but just the truth and the facts. Thank you so much, Zoe. This was really, really, I think, interesting, but also important. I heard you many times speaking, and I was really happy to have you as a guest, because I think that what you're saying needs to be heard. And your example as an activist is a great example to follow. And so I hope that more people will be able to, even like you said, liking, sharing, reposting something. And again, go on Zoe's profile on LinkedIn and see the list of people to follow. Those are great people to, to really support and give more exposure to. So thank you so much, Zoe, for being with us.
Pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And we will see you, everyone, and for another episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs and Leaders podcast. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Anna.